They laughed when she walked into the gun store. 1 hour later, they stood frozen. Let me tell you a story that will leave you questioning your assumptions about people. Before we dive in, if you love gripping, unexpected stories like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next twist-filled tale. Now, let's get into it. When the door to Harlan's gun and ammo creaked open that Saturday morning, every head inside turned. The regulars were leaned up against the polished wooden counter, sipping coffee that the owner, Old Man Harlan, always brewed in a dented steel pot. The place smelled like oil, gunpowder, and black coffee, a scent that made most men who came in feel like they belonged. But the woman who stepped in did not look like she belonged. She was young, mid-20s, maybe, thin, wearing jeans that had clearly seen better days, and a faded gray hoodie with a tear at the sleeve. Her sneakers were scuffed white, and her long brown hair was tied back in a messy bun. There was nothing intimidating about her. In fact, the first impression most people had when they looked at her was, fragile. The laughter started low, then rippled through the store. "Wrong shop, sweetheart," one of the men at the counter chuckled. He was tall, burly, wearing a camo hat and a belly that pushed against his hunting jacket. "The beauty salon's down the street." Another chimed in, "What's next? She's gonna buy a rifle for decoration in her bedroom?" The young woman didn't answer. She walked up to the counter, her step steady despite the heat of their stares. Harlan, a leathery man in his 60s with a sharp jaw and sharper eyes, gave her a quick once-over and raised an eyebrow. "Yes, miss. What can I help you with?" Her voice was quiet but firm. "I need a gun." That set the men off again. One slapped the counter so hard his coffee sloshed out. Another leaned back, shaking his head like he couldn't believe the comedy unfolding in front of him. But Harlan didn't laugh. He'd been in the business long enough to know not to underestimate anyone. "What kind of gun?" he asked. She paused, scanning the racks behind him. Rows of shotguns, rifles, and handguns gleamed under fluorescent lights. "Something I can handle. Reliable. Accurate." The laughter died down a notch, just slightly, as the men noticed she wasn't flinching. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't turning red or running out of the store like a scared rabbit. Harlan slowly pulled a matte black Glock from the shelf and placed it on the counter. 9mm. Standard. Good for self-defense. "You ever shot before?" Her eyes flickered to his, steady as stone. "Yes." The burly guy in the camo hat scoffed. "What did you shoot, sweetheart? Water balloons at the fair?" This time she did look at him. Not with anger. Not with nerves. But with something unreadable. Like a storm cloud that hadn't yet broken. Then she turned back to Harlan. "I'll take it," she said. Now, here's where the story shifts. Because an hour later, those same men who laughed would stand frozen, unable to believe what they were seeing. But let's not jump ahead just yet. Harlan, following protocol, led her to the shooting range attached to the shop. The men, fueled by curiosity and ego, followed. They wanted to watch the show. They wanted to watch her fail. The indoor range smelled of burnt powder and rubber. Targets were lined up at various distances, silhouettes with bullseyes at the chest and head. "All right, miss," Harlan said, handing her protective glasses and earmuffs. "Let's see what you can do." She slipped them on without hesitation. Her movements were practiced, smooth, almost military. The men exchanged smirks. One whispered, "This is gonna be good." She stepped into the lane, picked up the Glock, and held it with both hands. The gun looked natural in her grip, though the men didn't notice at first. They were too busy waiting for her to flinch, to recoil, to miss the paper target completely. The first shot rang out. Bang! The bullet punched dead center in the silhouette's chest. The smirks faltered. She fired again. Bang! The second hole appeared, right next to the first. And again. Bang! 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 5 shots, all clustered tightly in the center of the bullseye. The room went silent. She lowered the gun, calmly, as if she had just poured herself a glass of water instead of proving herself a sharpshooter. Then, without waiting for anyone's reaction, she pressed the button to send the target rolling back to her lane. She held it up, showing the perfect grouping of holes. The men didn't laugh this time. They just stared, their mouths half open. "Holy hell," one finally muttered. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" another asked. She didn't answer. She simply replaced the target, sent it back down the lane, and fired again. Headshots this time. Clean. Precise. Each bullet landed exactly where she aimed, the sound echoing like punctuation marks in the stunned silence. By the time she finished the clip, nobody was smirking anymore. They weren't even talking. They were frozen, watching her reload with effortless efficiency. It wasn't until she stepped back from the lane that Harlan finally spoke. His voice carried a weight that quieted the room further. "You're military," he said. Not a question. A statement. The young woman finally met his gaze, her eyes softening for just a fraction of a second. "Not anymore," she said. The men exchanged glances. Their laughter from earlier now seemed cheap, foolish, even shameful. "Why'd you come here?" Harlan asked gently. She looked down at the Glock in her hand, then back at the shredded target. Her jaw tightened. "Because I don't want to be defenseless again." The words hung in the air, heavy with a past none of them could see but all of them could feel. There was a story behind her, a pain carved into her bones. And suddenly, nobody dared laugh at her anymore. An hour ago, they thought she was a joke. Now, they stood frozen, humbled, and maybe even a little ashamed. That day, in Harlan's Gun and Ammo, the regulars learned something important: strength doesn't always walk in wearing camo or carrying broad shoulders. Sometimes, it walks in wearing a torn hoodie and scuffed sneakers, carrying scars invisible to the eye. And when it does, you better not laugh, because you might just end up standing frozen, watching someone you underestimated show you exactly who they are. That's the story. If it surprised you, if it made you think twice about judging someone before you know their story, then I've done my job. And if you want more stories that turn expectations upside down, make sure you subscribe right now, because the next one might just shock you even more.